I feel like this is a big changing point in my life. Yeah, so I just put out my Stephanie Sue video. Wow. You know, and you know what's crazy? There was actually so many things I wanted to say in addition, like she wanted to do a Veronica Wang documentary, the girl we were gossiping about. She like wanted to like, and I mean, I was pushy, yes, but I was just trying to think like, I need to keep this concise. So I just released my Stephanie Sue video. People have been demanding an apology. People have been demanding that I talk about what happened, and I've stayed silent on this matter for about 6 years straight. Since people keep bringing it up, I'm gonna show you guys exactly what happened, and I'm gonna show you what she did and what it cost me, and it's on my channel. I turned to her and I asked, is there anything else you'd like to say? What'd you like to say? Stephanie took this out of context and distorted it to make me sound way worse.
Nick turned to me and he said, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Because I made a response to her many years ago and it got no views compared to her, and I think people maybe tuned out. It was too long. It was almost like 2 hours, like an hour and a half. Like, who's gonna watch that? I mean, people did, but not everybody. So I really had to pick and choose what was most important. And I really wanted to focus on the obvious acting, the obvious like omission of facts, like editing the ASMR to make me look horrible.
People are really worried about Stephanie Sue after Nikocado Avocado did his weight loss reveal. You see, a few years ago, these two had one of the biggest internet beefs in history, and essentially they made a ton of videos about each other where Stephanie accused Nikocado of being manipulative and said that she was completely terrified of what he might do to her. And in Nikocado's video titled 2 Steps Ahead, he starts off the video by doing the reveal while wearing a panda costume head, which caused a lot of people to start digging up old videos of Stephanie where her husband is seen wearing the same exact panda head. So now everyone is convinced that the reason Nikocado wore this in his video is to basically send a message to Stephanie, and is basically alluding that their beef is not over and he still has plans to ruin her career.
I don't know why I'm nervous. I'm nervous because I know so many. I'm filming this today, a day before I post the Stephanie video, and I'm going to post both of them at the same time. Tomorrow, I am flying to California, to Los Angeles. It's like deja vu. It's like, remember when Stephanie released that video about me? I was stepping on an airplane. Well, now I'm stepping on an airplane going to California for something, and I'm putting out this big old video too. Oh gosh, it feels a little funky, but that's just the way the cards fell. It's kind of how it's lining up with the things I have to do and what I have to post. But Stephanie brought out the shaky character voice.
And I just remember feeling so gutted. Like my heart had dropped to the ground. My heart had dropped to the ground because I thought it was going to be another interrogation.
To misrepresent me.
Dropped to the ground.
Your heart dropped to the ground?
He really thought that I wanted to spill my guts about Veronica all of a sudden.
You guys, we seriously need to talk about Nikocado Avocado and Stephanie Sue, because out of nowhere, Nick just dropped a brand new 30-minute video where he's not only apologizing, but also calling Stephanie out. And it's reopening a YouTube feud we thought was buried back in 2019. Like, this isn't just some petty mukbang drama resurfacing. Nick is accusing Stephanie of literally scripting the entire situation and using emotional storytelling to paint him as a villain. And the craziest part, he's not backing down this time. He's laying out receipts, old clips, and even accusing her of using MeToo-style imagery to spin a narrative that he says was way off from reality. And let me just say, fans are absolutely stunned. Like, people are going back and rewatching Stephanie's old video, Why I Am Scared of Nikocado Avocado, and saying, wait a second, was this all a performance? Because now with Nick's side out there in 2025, the whole thing feels way messier than we ever knew. So we're going to break all of this down. What actually happened back in 2019, why it blew up the way it did, and how Nick is now claiming that Stephanie flipped the script, literally.
So, yeah, I know there's going to be so much hate, most likely, and people are like, you shouldn't bring this up, and you should keep things to yourself, and you're just trying to stir drama. And the truth is, for example, I was just on TikTok 2 days ago, live streaming. There were so many people, by the way. There's like 20,000 people in my live stream, which was amazing.
But first, let's go back to how this whole feud really started. Because trust me, understanding the original collab, the tension, and that viral breakdown video is key to understanding why this is blowing up all over again right now. And no, this isn't just about who was right or wrong. It's about reputation, online manipulation, and what happens when the internet only sees one side of the story. So here's the backstory. We're talking December 2019, peak mukbang era on YouTube. Stephanie Sue and Nikocado Avocado were both at the top of their game, pulling millions of views for eating insane amounts of food while casually spilling tea. They decided to film a collab together along with another popular mukbanger, Zach Choi. Now on the surface, everything looked fine. The video was posted, fans were hyped, but what we didn't know was that behind the scenes, things were already starting to spiral. According to Stephanie, during the filming, Nick allegedly pressured her to talk about another creator, Veronica Wang, someone she had past drama with. And apparently, Stephanie really didn't want to go there. She later said that she felt manipulated and cornered, like she was being set up to talk trash for content. She claimed the experience triggered serious anxiety and that she actually ended up canceling a second shoot they had planned afterward. Now this is where it gets messy, because once Stephanie pulled out of filming again, Nick didn't take it well. She said he started blowing up her phone with texts and described them as intense, invasive, and just too much, especially considering she was already having panic attacks.
And the amount of people were asking about Stephanie, like, what'd you do to her? You needed to talk about it. You need to apologize. Or like, you corrupted her system. And I was like, oh gosh, people just, they don't know. It still affects me. It's still following me. People are always commenting about it. There's so many people that just don't know my side or don't know the facts, or they know things that are just not true.
But it didn't stop there. Stephanie later said that Nick even took photos inside her house without permission, including pictures of her home security setup, which she viewed as a major breach of trust. Then came the video that flipped the internet upside down. Why I am scared of Nikocado Avocado. Stephanie sat down and calmly explained everything. The emotional manipulation, the pressure, the anxiety. She showed footage of herself visibly shaking on a couch with someone holding her and framed it as a trauma response. The internet immediately rallied behind her. The video went viral. We're talking over 17 million views. And suddenly Nick was public enemy #1 in the mukbang space. Nick did try to clap back with a video titled "My Response to Stephanie Sue," where he denied most of her claims, said she gave him permission to take photos, and argued she was using the whole situation for sympathy and clout. But honestly, at the time, nobody was trying to hear it. Even Zach Choi sided with Stephanie and publicly distanced himself from Nick. And just when we thought the whole thing was settled, it turns out that was just the beginning. So after Stephanie's video exploded, the internet did what the internet does best. It picked a side fast. And spoiler alert, almost nobody was siding with Nick. Fans flooded the comments with support for Stephanie.
And it just doesn't feel fair. You know, I'm not trying to stir the pot. I'm really not. I'm trying to communicate to the people who watch me who just don't know. And that's just the truth. And I really don't think people should walk away with this, but I don't think that I'm this saint that I did nothing wrong. I started the whole thing. It was all my fault. I'm like, I should have just not been such a drama queen.
Calling her brave, empathetic, and real. And for Nick, it was like overnight. He went from being one of the biggest names in mukbang to that guy everyone was canceling. And honestly, a lot of people felt like they had good reason, because then Stephanie dropped a second video. Yep, how Nikocado manipulated all of us. And this one? It came with receipts. She brought screenshots of text messages, behind-the-scenes footage, and even moments that she says prove Nick was gaslighting her. And it was detailed, like point by point, showing how he allegedly twisted things and tried to control the narrative. For a lot of people, it just confirmed what they already believed, that Stephanie was the victim here, and Nick was out for drama and views. And if there was any doubt, Zach Choi, the silent mukbang king who was also in the original collab, made a move that sealed it. He posted publicly that he supported Stephanie. And remember, Zach never talks in his videos. So when he broke silence to back her up, yeah, that spoke volumes. People on Twitter, Reddit, and YouTube went all in. Creators started making reaction videos, TikToks broke down every detail, and viewers were analyzing Stephanie's body language like it was a true crime case. The consensus was pretty clear. Nick had crossed a line, and Stephanie had every right to speak out. And during all this, Nick's image took a serious hit.
I started the whole thing. If I wouldn't have done that, she wouldn't have done anything to me. That was her reaction. That was her saying, you mess with me, I'm gonna mess with you twice as hard.
People started calling him manipulative, toxic, even dangerous. Some fans unsubscribed, others started making compilation videos titled things like Nikocado Avocado being unhinged for 10 minutes straight. It wasn't just about this one incident. It was like this drama confirmed every suspicion viewers had about his over-the-top personality. Nick, meanwhile, tried to keep his channel alive with chaotic content, but the damage was done. The trust was broken, and for a lot of people, there was no coming back from that. But then, years later, just when people had kind of moved on, Nikocado made a shocking confession that flipped the whole story upside down. So here's where things took a wild turn, because fast forward to 2021, when the dust had mostly settled and everyone had moved on, Nikocado Avocado randomly drops a bombshell in an interview with Mel magazine. And what he said completely shook everyone who had followed the drama. In the interview, Nick straight up claimed that the entire feud with Stephanie Soo was scripted. Like, he said it was all planned, orchestrated from the beginning, and meant to benefit both of their careers. According to him, they knew that if they created tension, people would talk, views would skyrocket, and both of their channels would blow up. He told the interviewer, "We both knew that this would be the best thing for our careers."
That was her playing chess with me. You know, I'm like, ooh, how can I be sneaky and get some gossip? And that's her saying, look what I'm going to do to you. You know what I mean? So I got one-upped, totally. She really one-upped me.
And that quote spread like wildfire. People were like, wait, what? You're telling me that the video where Stephanie was visibly shaking on a couch, the emotional breakdown, the dramatic fallout, was just content? A strategy to go viral? Nick didn't stop there either. He said that the whole thing was a way for him to lean into his villain persona, that he chose to be the train wreck, because that's what gets views. He literally said, "I've taken the path of a train wreck because I know what sells." And honestly, that's the kind of self-awareness that's both fascinating and kind of terrifying at the same time. But the thing is, Stephanie never commented on the interview. No denial, no clarification, nothing. And that silence, it only added fuel to the fire. Like, if it really wasn't scripted, wouldn't she have said something? Or was she just ignoring it to avoid dragging the drama back up again? So now, the whole situation became even more confusing. Were they both playing the internet? Or was Nick just trying to save face and reframe the narrative? No one could really tell. And fans were totally split. Some felt betrayed.
But it was my fault. So I don't want people thinking like, oh, you're just looking for sympathy and, you know, you want to act like you're an angel. I started it, and I also effed up in many different ways. And I genuinely apologized many times in that video, and I hope people get a sense of just the truth.
Others said they always suspected the drama was too polished, too viral to be 100% raw. But just when you think this whole thing was fading into YouTube history, here comes 2025, and Nick is dragging it all back up again, with a full-blown video, new claims, and a tone that feels like he's finally ready to tell his real side of the story. So here we are in 2025, and Nikocado Avocado just came out of nowhere with a 30-minute bombshell video that's got everyone talking again. And this time, it's not just chaos for views, he actually gets real. Like, surprisingly real. He opens the video by taking full accountability for his past actions. Yeah, you heard that right. Nikocado Avocado actually owns up to his part in the mess. He admits that back in 2019, he was immature, obsessed with getting juicy content, and completely missed the fact that Stephanie was clearly uncomfortable. He says he pushed too hard to get her to gossip on camera, vented in text when she bailed on their second collab, and then went online and ranted about it publicly, which only made things worse. And here's what's shocking, he doesn't dodge it. He calls himself childish, unprofessional, and says he handled everything completely wrong. In his own words, "You didn't owe me that, and I was totally out of line for reacting the way I did." Like, this isn't the loud, chaotic Nick we're used to. This was reflective, borderline emotional, and definitely not the persona he usually plays on camera. But of course, this is Nick, so that's not all he had to say. Because after owning up to his side, he pivots and says there's another layer to all of this. He claims that while he messed up, Stephanie also needs to be held accountable for the way she allegedly twisted the story to her advantage. And he goes in. Nick accuses her of weaponizing sympathy, using emotionally charged visuals to paint herself as a victim, and even crafting a narrative that he says was more performance than truth. He also says the whole fallout changed him, that after the drama, He stopped dragging other creators and focused more on his own solo chaos. And while that may be true, this new video is clearly his way of setting the record straight, like he's finally done staying silent. But as honest as that apology might have been, it's what Nick accuses Stephanie of next that's got fans doing a complete double take. So here's where things take a turn from uncomfortable to explosive. In this 2025 video, after apologizing for his behavior, Nick shifts focus and accuses Stephanie of doing something way more serious, manipulating the internet using emotionally charged imagery and leaning into themes that resembled the Me Too movement.
You know, and I don't want to just dwell on it, but I know people are going to be talking about it and asking about it, and like, you shouldn't bring it up. I mean, I feel like I have to, because it's been 6 years and I'm on my TikTok live stream and people are saying, what did you do to her?
All to paint him as a kind of predator figure. Now, to be clear, Nick doesn't say Stephanie made any direct accusations. But what he does point out, and he points it out loud, is how she opened her 2019 video. Remember that viral clip? Stephanie visibly shaking on a couch, someone holding her, her voice trembling, totally distressed. Nick says that for millions of viewers who had no clue who either of them were, that opening shot planted one big idea. This guy did something horrible. He says she didn't clarify who the man in the footage was until 30 minutes into the video. And by that point, most viewers had already clicked off, so people just assumed the worst. And then, throughout her video, she uses language and emotions that, according to Nick, mirrored those used by real survivors. Despite the fact that this whole situation was, at its core, a disagreement over content. Nick's exact words: "That movement isn't for you to use as a prop, it's not a storytelling device for dramatic effect." He claims that Stephanie knew he was upset, knew she had said things off camera that she didn't want exposed, and got ahead of the story by crafting a narrative that turned him into the villain before he could say a word. And honestly, a lot of viewers are watching this now in 2025 and saying, he might have a point. Because when you go back and watch Stephanie's original video with this new context, it does come across very intense, almost theatrical. And Nick calls it out, saying it felt calculated, like a scripted emotional performance meant to get sympathy and shut him down. But the real twist? This entire narrative, this dramatic arc of being in fear, hinged on one phrase that's since become infamous: in and out of sleep, and the way that line exploded online changed everything. So let's talk about that one phrase that basically took on a life of its own: in and out of sleep. In Stephanie's original video, she said that on the day of the second collab, the one she canceled, she was feeling anxious, overwhelmed, and was in and out of sleep. It was her way of explaining why she didn't show up, and from her tone, it clearly hinted at being emotionally drained.
So I'm like, I got to address it. The amount of sleepless nights. Talk about your quality of your mentals. Oh my God. I mean, I was broken for so long and I had to keep it to myself. I didn't want to just cry about it every day. The show must go on, so I just kept on doing my thing.
But here's where it blew up, because Nick later mocked that phrase in his videos, sarcastically repeating in and out of sleep over and over. And that clip, it went viral. People thought he was mocking her mental state. Or worse, that he was making fun of something much more serious. Nick now says that wasn't the case. He claims he didn't even know she had gone through anything traumatic in the past, and that the phrase to him just sounded like a vague excuse. He admits he was hurt and angry at the time, and says his mockery came from that place of frustration, not from trying to tear her down in a cruel way. But here's the problem: the internet didn't see it that way. Once Stephanie's fans made the connection between in and out of sleep and her previously mentioned struggles, they saw Nick's response as insensitive, even heartless. People assumed he was mocking a survivor, and that's where the backlash hit hard. Nick says this was one of the most painful parts of the whole fallout, not just because he was misunderstood, but because, in his words, he felt deliberately misrepresented. He says Stephanie knew what that phrase could imply and how it might be interpreted, especially in the context of a serious emotional video, and that she leaned into that ambiguity to make her side look stronger. He also calls out how her video showed her crying one second, then chewing food and laughing the next, claiming it was edited to keep only the emotional moments, while cutting the lighter ones to maintain the victim narrative. And as intense as that sounds, the next part of this story got even more invasive. because Stephanie accused Nick of doing something that crossed a very real boundary in her personal space. So remember how Stephanie said Nick took photos in her house without asking? Yeah, that part of the story was huge back in 2019. She claimed he crossed a major boundary, not just by snapping pictures of her place, but specifically of her security system. And she painted it as this creepy, invasive move that made her feel totally unsafe in her own home.
Being fat, being crazy, being a villain, it was just like, it was really, really strong. That type of emotion, like, you don't even need to know the facts. Once you feel a feeling, you don't even care about the words. The feeling is there. What's that saying? You never remember what someone says. You always remember how they make you feel.
And now in 2025, Nick is finally addressing it head-on. He says the entire thing has been completely misunderstood. According to him, Stephanie did give him a tour of her home. He says they talked about interior design, lighting setups, and kitchen layouts. Normal stuff, especially since he was in the middle of renovating his own place. He even says she was pointing things out to him, showing off her setup and being super friendly. Nick claims that during that conversation, he took a few pictures of design elements, and she was right there while it happened. Not hiding anything, he even says he was on FaceTime with Orlean, his husband at the time, showing him ideas for their own home renovation. But the moment things got blurry, Nick admits that while Stephanie briefly left the room, and he doesn't specify why, he continued taking a few more photos, still focused on the kitchen area. He didn't go snooping around the house, he didn't take photos of private stuff, but he now says, "I realized that was presumptive. I thought we were still in that flow of conversation, but I get now how that could have made her uncomfortable." And honestly, that admission might be the most reasonable part of the entire video. He's not denying that he took the photos, but he's saying it wasn't meant to be shady. It was just a misunderstanding based on context, not malice. And that subtle difference, intent versus impact, is what's making people take a second look at Stephanie's original claims. Some fans are even pointing out that Stephanie saying she didn't know why he was looking up at the ceiling felt like a stretch, especially since, according to Nick, there weren't even any fancy light fixtures to focus on. But at the end of the day, whether it was bad judgment or just bad timing, Nick says this whole experience changed him. And in the final part of his video, he makes one last plea for truth. So now that everything's out there, the collab, the text messages, the emotional videos, the photos, the viral shade, Nick ends his 2025 video with a tone that's way more serious than usual. Like, this isn't the Nick we've seen smashing fast food or yelling at the camera. This was a guy who genuinely looked like he needed to get something off his chest. He says flat out, "Two things can be true. I messed up. I pushed too hard for drama. I reacted poorly." But Stephanie didn't tell the full truth either. And that hurt more than anything. Nick says he's grown since then, that the drama with Stephanie made him reflect on how he uses his platform and how easily stories can be weaponized online. He apologizes again for pressuring her, for being immature, for taking things public. But he also says Stephanie owes it to the audience to come clean about the parts she exaggerated. Not because he wants revenge, but because he wants closure. And you know what? The comments under his video are kind of shocking. People who used to drag him are now saying they're starting to see his side fans are writing stuff like, "I came here thinking I'd hate this, but now I feel like I was manipulated too." And "She edited out laughing and eating but kept in the dramatic parts." That feels calculated. Some viewers even say they're reconsidering their support for Stephanie altogether, not because she didn't feel scared, but because they now feel like they were emotionally guided to see Nick as something he might not have been. And yet, Stephanie hasn't said a word. No response, no clarification. And that silence, it's loud. So now the big question becomes, was this all just a case of two creators clashing? Or did one of them really rewrite the narrative before the other could speak? Did Stephanie tell her story through the lens of fear? Or did she curate it to make herself the unquestioned victim? Whatever the truth is, one thing's for sure. This feud wasn't just about a mukbang gone wrong. It was about how powerful online storytelling can be, and how quickly the internet can crown heroes and villains, even when the full picture hasn't been seen.